So the introduction to the industry. So here we actually get to chapter 1 of Cook and Williams. So control is not possible without a plan, and without a program there is no effective means of exercising control. Successful control cannot happen in a vacuum. Nothing is typical about the construction industry, and one of the big problems in construction is the extent of separation between the design and production. Okay, so in the industry structure, the Department of Business, Enterprise and Regulatory Reform in 2007 reports in the construction industry made up some 186,000 firms. So this is in chapter 1 of your Cook and Williams. You will see this is old data, but it still gives us some good information on what exactly happens. It found that 1% of large firms employing over 80 people, this was in the UK, and 6% are medium-sized, employed between 14 and 79 people. Okay, it's very similar to South Africa. 93% are small firms employing less than 14 people. Okay, looking at permanent staff. So what I've done is I've just took this from the construction industry report of 2017. I think this was the latest one. They haven't published one now recently. I think they indicated that there will be one in this year, just to update the industry. So I just wanted to highlight some items here. So if you're a registered CIDB graded contractor, this is more or less the categories. So you will see category 1, these are businesses that have a smaller turnover for their financials, and then up to a designation 9 where contractors have large turnover, which will be able to do projects over 200 million and carry that capital actually. So this is just the indication of the financials of the contractors, the size of the project that they can take on, etc. You will also see that you've got a CE, EB, EP, etc. So we usually look at CE, which is our civil contractors, and GB, which is our building contractors. Then you've got your mechanical, specialist, glassworks, electrical, and then there's a couple of others that's not listed here. But it's interesting to see we've got quite a lot of civil contractors and also a lot of building contractors. Okay, and you will see there's a lot of new contractors coming in, and only a couple like your old group 5s, which you had your Robexes, Ruvacorns and those, although yeah, I'm not sure about Ruvacorn whether they fall within this in which categories they fall, but these are your larger, more well-known companies, and you can see how the distribution looks. So it's very similar to the British feedback that we had there on the first slide. Okay, and then it's just broken down into the Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, etc. And you will see that Gauteng by far is the highest, followed by the Western Cape. Although the Eastern Cape is higher, Western Cape is actually not that much of up-and-coming contractors, but interesting, if you go to the larger contractors, the Western Cape has quite a lot over other provinces. So very interesting information that you can source. You can also have a look at if the latest report is maybe published already. Okay, then we get to the industry culture. There's nothing typical about the customs and practices in the construction, as many of you have probably noticed already. One big challenge is the extent to which industry separates design from production far more than other industries, especially in our environment where we've got the consultants. You do this design, it goes out on tender, and the contract is priced for that. So it's fairly much the tradition that we've got here in South Africa. We work in a fragmented project-based industry. very important, and I think probably one of the biggest challenges on any project is you've got so many silos of in the industry, and not everyone is really knows about all of the things. That's where the contractors come in quite handy, because they're constantly sourcing new materials from suppliers, different suppliers, etc. And that's why they have quite a nice background and a lot of information for that they can bring to the table. Okay, then we look at the reports. I'm going to not focus too much on the reports because everything is contained in the book. Please read through that. It's very important to go through it, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. So from the Latham report, which was done in 1994, you can see that mistrust between participants is something which they highlighted. Sensitivity to government spending, intensive competition work, inability to respond to increased demands, lack of competency tests confirmed, lack of training, inadequate capital base, adverse attitudes, claim contractors, high level of insolvency. Fairly much the same challenges that we've got today. Then the Latham report towards planning production, they made some recommendations. A real cost reduction of 30% by 2000 they wanted to produce. Now we're getting to that point where through a time we actually have increased production, like for instance prefab construction methods is picking up. The main thing driving all of these goals that they've got is viability and cost. Someone in the construction industry will follow the path of least resistance to get the project done as quickly as possible to make as much money as possible. So the construction industry or many firms won't necessarily implement new technology or processes if they don't have time and money for it. So that's much of the time a reason why the construction industry progresses so slowly, because it's a risk that everyone has to take. Because you can imagine if you have to take a risk on building on a 30 million building, and if you've decided to go lightweight steel, and now suddenly you have a challenge later on which might even cause that the project or the building cannot be occupied, that is a major risk to the client, to the contractor, to everyone involved, because who's going to take responsibility for that? So that is one of the biggest challenges for implementing new processes on sites. A good example of that is, for instance, if you look at lightweight steel homes in South Africa, most clients or home owners won't necessarily take that risk, because is it going to have the same lifespan as a brick and mortar one? The sound between the walls, the soundproofing, etc. Even though you've got a better R value on the project, it doesn't necessarily mean that your soundproofing will be the same. So, but it's the biggest capital investment that the client or the homeowner will make. So he doesn't want to make a mistake. So people will stick to the things that most people are using at that stage, which is brick and mortar. It's a safer route. Most contractors are familiar with it, etc. Whereas if you go to Australia, lightweight steel is commonplace there, and people use that much more often. And also the cash, the possibility of having a saving using a system like that, it doesn't justify the risk that you're going to take. So all of these things play into how new technologies is implemented. Then the Latham report, he concluded that most effective from the contract should be specific duties for parties to deal fairly with each other, take all steps necessary to avoid changes where they do occur. Stuff that we already know, which has become commonplace, that we look at whenever we do the contracts. The conclusion from the report was steps to improve productivity, better quality design and improve briefing of designers, challenges to trade and professional training education, improving the image of the industry, encourage fewer disputes by encouraging partnering. This is quite an important item which has in many sections actually started. And then improve quality of construction professional contractors and subcontractors. Publication of report from 12 working groups and diverse groups. So yeah, just this last point is not that important. It's just basically looking at the 12 groups of the industry, home building, civil engineering, etc., etc. Then we look at the Egan report, which came 4 years later, and it was a shorter report. Yeah, again, they proposed a bit more partnership, long-term relationships, and then 5 key drivers of change was identified. Committed leadership, focus on the customer, integrated processes, teams, quality-driven agenda, commitment to people. Okay, so I think with BIM coming in and the processes of design, the design processes and the ability to share more information easier between the parties, we actually are achieving some of these items identified, but it's still a long way to go. Then there was a second Egan report, which was published in 2002, and then they highlighted the need for the client leadership, the need for integrated teams and supply chains, and people issues, health and safety became quite important at this stage. Emphasis was still on collaboration between the parties. The report suggested 5 steps for clients when considering a build. Verification of the need, assessment of the options, development of a procurement strategy. This might seem as if it should be in place, but not everyone has a procurement strategy really in place. Procurement or project delivery, project review. Again, that's the closeout section where you actually have a look at what did we learn from this project, how can we implement it into the next project. The challenge is usually the project team goes to different sites, and it's not necessarily the same project team that works on the next project. Okay, then the National Audit Report. Okay, then this is just very interesting to see. 73% of construction projects of government were over budget. 70% was late. The main reason, adverse relationships that exist between the construction firms. Long-term collaboration was emphasized after this report. So this is from the UK. So I think this third point is not really, it's less applicable in the construction industry, but these percentages I think is fairly close to what we've got in South Africa. Okay, then I just posted a little break for the lectures, and you can go through that and just have a look. And that is the first content lecture, if I can call it that, our second lecture. So thanks for tuning in, and please remember to go through your material as we've gone through it during the lectures.